I want to bring in MSNBC election law analyst Matthew Sanderson, who's also joining us. Matthew, what do you make of what Pete's talking about here? I don't know if you've had a chance to actually see the appeal filing itself, but based on that description, what's your sense of where this goes?
Well, I think this is just, Pete mentioned that this is haphazardly written. This is just the latest filing that happens to be replete with errors by the Trump legal team. And I think it's worth noting, I mean, this is not the equivalent of Florida in 2000. It's more like Bush v. Gore, but if you replace James Baker with the co-editor of a QAnon subreddit. Republicans aren't putting their best foot forward, and this whole legal strategy has really been a comedy of errors that would be funny if it weren't so damaging for the country.
There are still a bunch of cases, about a dozen or so unresolved cases involving election results. What is your sense, Matthew, of whether any of them make it to the Supreme Court?
Well, so the cases, the few cases that do remain involve either small batches of ballots or are essentially rehashed claims that have been previously rejected by courts. So I think, moving forward, we shouldn't expect to see any change in the result, and I don't see anything that's been filed thus far that would overturn the apparent result of the election. And the Trump legal team has now taken to promising that there are some blockbuster filings in the works and those will come, but that's not how a real legal strategy unfolds. Candidates, for a very good reason, file their best cases as early in the process as possible, and that's because once states start to certify their results, the chances of a candidate succeeding on a claim are vanishingly small. And so when someone has a real legal case, they put their proof on the table immediately. When someone's spinning a conspiracy theory, they promise that the proof is right around the corner. And that's what I think we're really seeing here, is an abdication of a real legal strategy and instead a political strategy to spin myths.
Hey, Pete, real quick, what's the next thing you're looking for? The next potential pivot point here, key sort of timing deadline that you're watching?
We'll see what the Third Circuit does with this. As I say, I can't imagine it's going to go very far. Basically, there's sort of two levels of these cases. All the claims of fraud have sort of washed out. The second is some claims that the state, especially Pennsylvania, wrongly allowed voters to fix their ballots if they had defective mail ballots by filing provisional ballots. The state Supreme Court's going to decide whether that's the case. But even if it says it is, it's not going to change the election results. So there are some sort of technical, interesting legal questions to be resolved here that are legitimate questions for the next time, but nothing that I think is imminently going to change anything in any state result.
Matthew, let me ask you about the team itself, because the Trump campaign is distancing itself from Sidney Powell. She, of course, is that controversial attorney who pushed this sort of convoluted conspiracy theories about Venezuela involving a dead dictator, vote-switching machines, none of it, of course, any evidence of any of it. Yet, she is somebody who the president just about a week ago touted as a member of his legal team. And it's worth noting that Rudy Giuliani, who's standing alongside of her at that news conference last week, has also pushed some of these wild claims. How do you see this team either working together moving forward or, frankly, not, given what we also know about the president's dissatisfaction himself with some members of his team?
Yeah, there's been a rotating cast of characters through the president's legal team. Obviously, the Pennsylvania litigation, for example, is on his third team of lawyers. And I think that says a lot. It says a lot by, who's involved, but also who's not involved. You're not seeing the top level Republican attorneys, even those that favor Trump, involved in these cases. And I think that speaks volumes. Real lawyers are keeping their distance from an effort that's really dropped any pretense of a legal strategy and is really moving on to advocating for Americans who are in positions of public trust to abandon their legal responsibility, such as attempts to pressure Michigan legislators or members of the Board of Canvassers not to follow through with the established legal process. And so that's why I think you're not seeing a massive influx, which normally you would see a lot of high-profile lawyers flock to a case like this. There's a reason they're keeping their distance.
I would just say one other thing about Sidney Powell.
Matthew,
the president knows her. She's Michael Flynn's lawyer.
That's right.
Right. Right, and she's been involved in that case since, I think, the start. Pete Williams, Matthew Sanderson, thanks to the both of you. I appreciate that.